whole nother level, but still keep it ghetto, whole nother level, but still keep it ghetto, whole nother level.
Welcome to episode 20 of The Process of
Another
Hip-Hop.
level, but still keep it ghetto.
Writer, blogger,
The Process of Hip-Hop.
and as always, it's all about the process. Today's new segment, Fatimah Patrice, MC from the Bay Area, Richmond, California. So let's get into it.
I'd like to welcome to the Process of Hip-Hop, Miss Fatimah Patrice. What's going on, my lady? So glad that you're here and able to join us. Fatimah, I wanted to start with, you've been doing some music for a couple years now. I know you have an album that you released in 2017, but when did you first begin? Tell me about your origins and when you began rapping and how you got interested in hip-hop.
Well, I come from a family of, where they love music, and it comes from as far as my mom was, jazz and reggae, and then my stepdad, he was, into, Snoop Dogg and gangster rap and everything, so I got a taste of everything, and so I just started to write, I'll say me about, 12, when I started to, kind of write poetry, because for some reason, with a lot of artists, I know that it starts like that, it's like poetry, and then it kind of ventures into, music, because it's one and the same once you kind of get the gist of, different writing styles.
Yes.
And how hip-hop is and everything. So it started there for me, and I started to get into it seriously maybe in about, it was maybe 2013,
Okay.
roughly. And then I started to do it seriously in 2016, 2017. But I also started in a rap group where we were just having fun and everything. I was in a rap girl group called Girl Scouts. And that kicked off, I think, in, I want to say 2007, 2008. And we were just having fun with it. It wasn't nothing like, oh, okay, yeah, we're, if it popped for us, it would have been great. But at the same time, it was like, oh, okay. And so out of all the group members, I was like, okay, I want to do this seriously. And then the other group members, I really didn't plan on making it a life thing. It was just, we're having a good time. So in 2013, I was like, okay, well, let me give it a try. And then 2016, I was like, okay, I'm going to really do this.
What were the biggest differences when you started to, because I always find this interesting, because there's an art, there's a science of rap. But what were the biggest differences when you decided to, okay, I'm going to actually do this for real? How did that change your whole perspective on hip hop?
That's a really good question. So I noticed once we were doing it for fun, the severity of it. It was oh, okay, no, there's a business side, and then there's a unwritten code for things, and then noticing how the women and the men are divided and just everything. And I think that's when the other group members okay, this is getting too serious. It was fun at first, but once it started to get serious as far as the business side and learning different genres and just everything, for me it was kind of exciting because it was just oh, okay, I can choose my lane and I can ride that lane. So that's pretty much where I was okay, I know which way I want to go.
Now, you alluded to the fact that you kind of always saw rap. You saw it. Obviously, it's one and the same with poetry, depending on who you talk to. Did that influence the way that you wrote your lyrics from a poetic style, or how did that influence you coming up with your content?
Yes, definitely the writing style of the poetry, the poetic side. I noticed that a lot of the conscious rap was very poetic, and I was like, okay, yeah, I like that. And so I kept that same flow. It's I have a couple songs actually that were poems turned songs. One of my songs, Hearts and Autumn, was actually a poem. And then I was like, let me, because the rhythm of it was oh, okay, it's still rhyming. I feel like songs, of course, a lot of them rhyme, a lot of them nowadays don't. But I noticed that with music, it's okay, there's a rhythm to it, such as poetry has, some poetry has. So I was I'm going to turn this poem into a song. So Hearts and Autumn was made through poetry, or from poetry.
When you hear a track, or how do you like to prepare? Okay, so you obviously are writing lyrics, but when you're actually getting ready to perform, Do you like to hear a track first and have something already written that you're going to adapt to that track? Or do you like to hear a track and write from the perspective of hearing that track?
Actually, both. And a lot of times people send me beats and instrumentals and say, "Do you like that?" And then the words kind of just write, like the song will write itself. Sometimes once I get the beat, and then sometimes lyrics would just pop in my head. I'll be anywhere, and then I'll just either put it in my phone or write it on a piece of paper, put it in my pocket for later, and it just falls from out the sky. And then I find something that matches that. But yeah, both.
Who would you say were some MCs that influenced your style?
Oh, most definitely Eve. Eve, Rough Riders, DMX, um, Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole for sure, um, Erica Badu, Lauryn Hill. I just like the way that they think, like how they dissect the story, like the storytelling of it all. It's like, wow, I would never thought to put a song together like that.
And what's interesting, I think, obviously you're a female artist, and being a female artist, many times I think people probably assume that your influences are going to be other female rappers. But you talked about Kendrick Lamar. You talked about again some other rappers that are just rappers. So I've had female MCs on the show before, and I always think it's interesting that do you do you like to be considered a female MC? Is it something that you just want to be considered an MC? Because I always think there's advantages and disadvantages to both, somewhat. But what is your take on that?
Well, one of the things is like we're all MCs, and you never really hear people say, "Oh, he's a male MC." You know,
No.
it's like, "Oh, it's a female MC." You never hear them say male MC. It's, "Oh, it's a female." But I get it though. It's not nothing where I'm just like, "Well, I just want to be an MC." It's nothing like that. But I get it's a male dominated field, obviously. But I see it's like I can see from both sides where it's just like, okay, this is such a male dominated field. Of course, you want to say, hey, this is a woman that you're dealing with or a lady that you're dealing with. Say female MC, so people won't think like off the top, like when this person is presented, it's like, oh, when you hear rapper, you think male. So,
Right.
of course, saying female is like, it's almost like a natural reflex when you're dealing with female artists.
And there's also, I think, a little bit of hypocrisy because, men, obviously, again, it's male dominated industry, and men are pretty much permitted to say whatever they want and without much backlash. And I think there's always a little bit more censorship with women MCs that say the exact same thing as men, but well, how could you say that? Or it's more heavily scrutinized when women do the same exact things that their male counterparts do. So, do you find that? Have you experienced that at all?
Well, for myself, I get where you're coming from as far as a lot of female wild rappers will say like vulgar things, and it's like, oh my god, I can't believe you said that. But for myself, I'm rapping from my experiences, and those women are rapping from their experiences. So I have not experienced that myself, but I've seen it for other people. So it's in a way, it's just like it is that double standard there, and I do feel it's unfair. But we grew up in a world that says women do this, men do that, and I see people trying to break down the barriers of it all, and I applaud it because it's like, okay, yeah, let's break that down because I have barriers of my own that I want to break down, but I totally get where that comes from.
Do you see yourself, I mean, again, kind of in the future, do you see yourself moving more toward, because I look at you and I see a true artist, and what I mean by that is that there is not just you. Yes, you are an MC, but I see also some other facets of you. You have your YouTube channel. I definitely want to talk about that in a little bit, where you kind of come off again. You're motivational. You have a socially conscious element to you. How do you see yourself from a career perspective? Like, where do you see that going? Is that something that you would like to, other areas you'd like to delve into, or? What?
Absolutely. One person that I look up to a lot is Queen Latifah, and I noticed that she doesn't get the credit she deserves. Like,
Not at
she
all.
did TV shows, she had the movies, rapping, singing, like, you name it. She's done it, and it's like she's not getting the credits. Like, they're looking at other artists who maybe done one or two things, and she's done a million. So it's like, I would love to just follow in her footsteps, because she's still very relevant right now, where people are just like, oh, is she? And it's like, yeah, she is, because she's still movies, Broadway, like, you name it, like, she's doing it.
Absolutely.
And I feel like it's because of her presence, the way that she presented herself. Like, you'll remember, like, when you hear Queen Latifah, you look at her and you're just like, yeah, like, everyone has this respect for her, and I would love to have that same respect, where it's just like, when someone hears my name, it's not like, oh, her. It's like, oh, yeah, Fatimah Patrice, yeah.
Yeah.
So.
And Queen Latifah, I have so much respect for her, because she's in the conversation for the female GOAT, if you ask me, greatest of all time, for a lot of different reasons. And I think number one, she lyrically, as an MC, she obviously has skills, but you don't, kind of what you just talked about. When you look at a person or an individual or an artist, you are always going to consider the other things that they are able to do. So this is someone who arguably sings just as well as any other R&B singer. She's obviously an accomplished actor. So yes, definitely somebody I would think it would be good to pattern yourself after. Obviously, there's other artists that have done that, but she's definitely one of the notable, I would say, exceptions to be really, really good in a lot of different things, to put it plain and simple. She has a lot of talent. So as far as you had that self-titled album in 2017. Was that your debut album? Or
as a solo artist, yes. As a solo act, that was my first project, and I worked on that for so long. It's because I was trying to find my sound and try to still develop my voice. Like, even in this very moment, I'm still developing a sound and a voice. So that was my first one, where I was like, okay, I'm going to solidify this sound. And then as time goes, you grow, and you're just like, I want to do something more. I like that, but I want to do something more.
Right. What was as far as the production? Tell me about that album a little bit. I mean, you said it took a while, but who did the production? What type of producers did you work with on that particular album?
Well, actually, people came to me, and then with a few I found on, I want to say, I think it's called BeatStar. Some of them are from websites. A few of them were like the track Hearts in Autumn, for sure, the Nostalgic Infatuation. A lot of the songs were from just producers that I heard, and I really liked the sound. It had the conscious kind of boom bap sound, and I really wanted to gear towards that. And surprisingly, Common was on my mind a lot of the album. Like, Common, the rapper, he was definitely like an influence for that album. The song "The Light," like, for some reason, it just kept coming up in my head, where I was just like, I want to recreate that sound or recreate that kind of vibe. So that actually was pretty much the base of the album. And when you hear the first song, the Fatimah Patrice intro, it's like, oh, okay, like, you can kind of get the vibe of the album.
Now, when I listened to that album, there was also a song that obviously stood out just from obviously its name, but even the way that the lyrics of it, and that was Black Bitch. And I thought that when you looked at that, you said, wait a minute, what is this song about? And I want you to talk about that, as far as what was the idea behind creating the song and then titling it Black Bitch?
Okay, so that song, so a lot of people actually enjoyed that. Like, they liked it a lot. The song, they thought it was gonna be about, like, like an angry black person or black bitch, but it ended up being a more political side of it, and just kind of seeing from a black woman's point of view of being viewed as a black bitch. So, a lot of, surprisingly, I was like, okay, I thought it was going to shake up a little bit, shake up people, but people actually really liked it. And a lot of black women were actually, I feel that way. Like, they agreed. They was like, Yes, exactly. Like, I'm not gonna steal, and I'm not gonna act crazy with you. I'm not gonna do these things. Why are you saying these things are that way? And then I have two brothers, and they were like, "Do you really feel that like a lot of black men, will overlook black women for, a white woman or for?" And I was just like, it happens in your face, but I'm not saying everybody's doing it. I'm just saying this is how I feel. And also, I noticed in the song, I noticed with people with the song, the reaction that I get a lot is, it's basically, do I truly feel that way? And I'm like, in the moment, heck yeah, I feel that way.
Right,
So,
right. And as artists,
yeah.
artists are always, whether you like it or not, you are going to, and I think, and I'll just, hip hop has, obviously, black culture is hip hop, synonymous with that. And I would say hip hop artists, whether they like it or not, are spokespeople for black culture, whether they like it or not, because that's the way that society is going to view it. And that's obviously been an age-old question since hip-hop started. Are you a role model? Are you and I always say, well, whether you like it or not, you are, because that's kind of the arena that you've entered, being the music industry, and you're going to kind of embrace that, or you're going to have to embrace it, I think, whether you like it or not. Now, couple things I also want to touch on. So you're from the Bay. And shout out to the Bay Area. Got me being a Southern California person. Shout out to the Bay. But the Bay Area definitely has a unique sound and style to it. Did that influence you at all, or did you still kind of feel like you had your own style, or did that hyphy sound that's been so prevalent in the Bay influence you at all?
I grew up listening to E40. I grew up listening to Max Dre,
yes,
all these Bay Area artists. And what's the crazy part, and everyone says that sometimes when they hear me talk or when they hear my music, they think New York. And I'm like, all of my favorite artists are from the East Coast. Well, a lot of them are from the East Coast that are my favorite artists. Or they're from down south. And a lot of people mention it, like, I noticed that people on your list are not from the West Coast. And if they are, it's maybe like someone from Southern California. And I'm like, well, I grew up listening to this, and it didn't influence me wholeheartedly, but there is, like, with the newer music I've been working on, like, I have a song called Tina Turner. That was definitely influenced by the Bay, because I was just like, okay, I have to do something that shows where I'm from. And I was like, everything else is like, you're unsure of where I'm from. It's like, I wonder where this person's from. Because with a lot of people's music, their sound, you'd be like, oh, that's definitely Detroit, or that.
Yes.
But, like, for me, I noticed it wasn't a distinct sound that was like, oh, okay, yeah, she's from the Bay.
Yeah, I would definitely say, again, it's a mixture. I definitely think your sound has a mixture. I do the Bay Area just because they have such a distinct sound. And I would always say Bay Area artists, much like every region, they're very proud of where they're from. So in their lyrics, they're shouting out, East Oakland, what have you. They're shouting that out. So it's one of those things where, it's very distinctive, that style. But again, that's also prominent with other areas as well. Now,
right.
Where would you like to see yourself, your career, 1 to 3 years from now?
1 to 3 years. One of the biggest things that I want to do, that I kind of wrote down, I did write down as a goal, is I want to tour at least the United States and get a good, solid fan base, like, for myself. And that right there, to me, is going to help me figure out what the next direction is. Right now, I am definitely into, like, the whole motivational thing, for sure. And then also, I love music, so I do Freestyle Fridays and everything. But I feel like once I kind of get a good fan base and travel a little bit more, I think that's going to help me decide what avenue to take, for sure.
Where did the idea for the Motivation Mondays, the YouTube channel that you have, where did that come from as an artist? I mean, those are usually kind of two separate lanes. People choose either one or the other. Where did the idea for that come from?
So I have friends industry are pursuing music themselves, and they always call or text me, and when they're feeling a way like, what do you do when you feel down about this, or how do you motivate yourself to da-da-da? And I would just have long conversations with a lot of people, and even people who are not in the industry, or just regular everyday people, and they were like, how do you get so happy all the time? And I'm like, it's a choice. And I explain to them, like, here, I read this book, or I do this, I do that. And they're like, but how do you do it all the time? And I'm like, it's a choice. Like, so I'm like,
right.
You know what? Let me just start making videos where people can reference that. Like, it's okay, cheer for you, like, be your own cheerleader. Do this, do that, do that. And so far, so good. People are like, oh, I like it. Like, it's helpful to me. Like, and I think they like the idea that I give examples of how to voice versus just telling you to do something but not telling you how to. But, yeah, it came from just friends and family and just random people saying, like, how did you do that? Or how did that change your mind? Just people asking me and me answering the question.
So you said that your desire is to be able to tour, and you want to obviously expand your horizons. Currently, though, what music are you currently working on right now?
Currently, I am working on my second album, and I'm doing kind of a test right now because it sounds like I put out 5 singles the end of 2018 that rolled into 2019, and they all have different sounds. And I was testing to see which avenue to go to with the sound, and so far people are still into more of like a trap sound, because I have a song called Wise Guy, and it has more of that kind of I still dropped in like some conscious lyrics in there, but it has more of like a clubby trap sound. So everyone's like leaning towards that one, but also people are enjoying a song called Black Lives. And so it's still like it's going to be a mixture of like trap and it's going to remind you of like an Erykah Badu type.
Right.
I don't know if you've ever seen when she does the DJing for like the hip hop cyphers.
Yes, I have.
Yeah, so it's going to be similar to her. Yeah, to her sound on there. Like she has this hip hop, but it's still very like hip hop trap.
Yeah.
Type sound. Yeah. So that's the sound I'm leaning towards. So right now the music that I'm working on is more so on that end.
Well, I know kind of the answers to some of this next question, but what's the best way for people to stay in contact with you?
Definitely Instagram. Instagram is the place to be. And then I'm venturing towards YouTube, so those would be the 2 best places. But I am on Twitter as well. So everything where you can find me, even SoundCloud, is Fatimah Patrice. Fatimah, when it's spelled, it has an H at the end. A lot of people don't, they'll put in Fatimah, the Fatima or M-A, and they'll be like, I can't find you. I'm like, you put the H at the end, and they're like, oh, no.
Right.
So, yeah, make sure you add the H at the end of Fatimah, and then it's Patrice, Patrice, and that's everywhere, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, SoundCloud, Tumblr, you name it. I'm pretty much everywhere, but the main one would be Instagram.
Well, Fatimah, best of luck to you in the future. You're a talented artist, and again, I hope nothing but great things for you in the future.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Whole nother level.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of The Process of Hip Hop. Join us next week for our next episode. The Process of Hip Hop is produced and edited by me, Brian Joseph. Executive produced by Dale Harewood. Music by DJ Big Mike of Real Side Records at realsiderecords.com.